Hi, ladies and gents. Today, you and I are going to be working with place value patterns in our numbers. Let's go watch our visual learning video to get us started.
You can use place value patterns and mental math to count by ones and tens to 100. Look at the first row in the table. What happens to the ones digit as you read across the row?
They go up by 1. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
The ones digit goes up by 1 each time you move one space to the right. If you start at 37 and count back to 31, what happens to the ones digit? The ones digit goes down by 1 each time you move one space to the left. How does each number change if you move right or left?
It goes up or down.
Each number changes by 1 if you move one space right or left. What pattern do you see with the tens digits? In each row, the tens digit is the same in each number. The tens digit goes up by 1 as you read down each column. 33, 43, 53. By how much does each number change as you move one space up or down?
By 10.
Each number goes up by 10 as you move down one space. Each number goes down by 10 as you move up one space. You can also use place value patterns and mental math to count by ones and tens to 1,000. What patterns do you see in this table?
Let's try it out. Decide whether the pattern describes a pattern in a row or a column. Place the pattern in the correct place. So we have the numbers change by 1. So our numbers changing by 1 would be going in the row because our ones place is changing by 1 if you go left or right. So that would be a change in the row. The tens digit change by 1. So our tens digits are increasing and decreasing. They're going up and down when we go up and down. So that would be a pattern in a column. The tens digit stays the same. So if we look at where the tens digits stay the same, the blue ones, they are staying the same in each row. So that is a pattern in a row. And the numbers change by 10. Our numbers are changing by 10 as we go up and down in our columns. The tens places are going up or down. So that would be a pattern in the column.
The ones digit goes up by 1 from left to right. The tens digit goes up by 1 from top to bottom. By how much does each number change as you read across the rows? Each number changes by 1 when you read across the rows. By how much does each number change as you read down the columns?
By 10.
Each number changes by 10 when you read down the columns. What number would come next in the chart as you read across the first row from left to right? Select your answer.
If we were at 531 and we were counting from left to right, it would go 531, 532, 533, 534, 535, 536, 537, 538.
538. What number would come next in the first column as you read down the first column from top to bottom?
Our numbers from 531 to 541 to 551 are increasing from top to bottom by 10 or by 110 each time. So we would go 531, 541, 551, 561. We would go up by 10 more.
Count. 531, 541, 551, 561. So 561 would come next.
You can count by tens.
Now you see how you can use place value patterns and mental math to count by ones and tens to 100 and to 1,000.
Let's go get some practice in our workbooks. Okay, ladies and gents, make sure you have your workbook and you are open to page 542 with your pencil. We're going to do these guided practice problems here together. It says, use place value patterns and mental math to find the missing numbers. Notice we're using mental math. We are not drawing things out on our whiteboards, and we're not using our fingers to count things up, because the numbers that we're working with, you guys, are way too big to be drawing out on our whiteboards or to be counting with on our fingers. So we have to start using our mental math skills to help us solve these. So we need to fill in the table for number 1. So what I like to do on these is to first fill in my top row, because those ones only increase by 1 or decrease by 1 within the row. So I go 784, 785, 786, 787, 788, 789. They're just increasing by 1. And then one more than 789 would be 790. Now that I have my first row done, I could do a couple different things to help me figure out the rest of the numbers. I could go down to 794 and start counting by ones across the row. There's nothing wrong with that. Or I can get a little bit fancier and I can look at my numbers in my top row and I can add 10 to them to find the number below it, because my rows, when I go down the columns, they increase by 10. So 785 plus 10 would be 795. My tens place increases by 1. So the 8 in 785 becomes a 9 in 795. I can do the same thing over here. 787, that 8 in the tens place is going to increase by 1 and become 797. Same thing here with 788. The 8 in the tens place is going to increase by 1 and become a 9. So my number is now 798. Notice if you look up and down my columns, like right here, 787, 797, the ones and the hundreds are not changing, okay? So the only number that's going to change when I go down a row and when I'm moving up and down a column is the tens place. Now that's going to be different if you cross over 100. So if you notice, the next number down in this column is 807. So you have to be careful with that, because 9 tens plus 1 more 10 would in fact be 10 tens, which is another 100. And then let's see, we just have a couple left to fill in on the bottom row. Because we've crossed over 800, I'm going to go back to counting by ones across my row to help me fill these in. So 804, 805, 806, 807, 808. Remember, you are filling all of this in with me, ladies and gents. You are doing these problems as I do them. 809, and then my final number would be 810. Okay, let's look at number 2. Here's our table that we need to fill in using our place value patterns and mental math. If we start on the top row, we can count from left to right by ones to fill those in. We're going to start at 412. So 412 plus 1 would be 413. Plus 1, 414. Plus 1 would be 415. We're just counting by ones right now. And then 416, and then 417, and then 418. I always continue my row to make sure that I completed the pattern correctly. If this next one said 419, that means that I did something wrong. So I wanted to make sure that my numbers match up all the way across. Now, I could do the same thing with the second row and start at 422 and just keep counting by ones, or I can do what we did on number 1 and I can jump down by tens. So I'm going to try that. 413. Well, the 1 in the tens place needs to go up by 1. So my tens place is now going to be a 2. My hundreds and my ones are going to stay the same though. So now from 413, if I add 10, I get to 423. And then if I look down, 433, that's another 10 that I increased. Same thing with this column. 414, my 1 in the tens place has to go up by 1, so that becomes a 2. I could keep going on my pattern and go plus 1, my 10 becomes a 3. And then I fill in my hundreds, 4, 4, and my ones, 4, 4. They're the same in my columns. 414 plus 10 is 424. Plus 10 is 434. There's lots of different ways you can see these patterns. This one, 425 plus 1 would be 426. 427 plus 1 would be 428, which is the same as 418 plus 10. And 428 plus 10 would be 438. So my 10s become a 3, not a 2. It's not super tricky, ladies and gents. You just have to make sure you're doing the patterns in the correct directions and that you're not skipping anything, and you will pick this up really quickly. Let's go watch one more quick video.
Using mental math and place value patterns, you can do a lot, like count by ones and tens to 100. Look at this chart. What do you notice about the ones digits? They go up by 1 from left to right. And what about the tens digits? Yup, they go up by 1 from top to bottom. And these same rules work if you're counting by ones and tens to 1,000. Look at the ones. They still go up by 1 from left to right. And the tens still go up by 1 from top to bottom. You see the missing number? You can even use these rules to find out what it is. Yay! You did it! The missing number is 586. Place value patterns and mental math. They sure do make a great team when counting. And when finding a missing number.
Let's get some more practice in our workbooks. Let's turn that page. We're going to do number 3 together. It's the same thing as those first 2 problems that we did. So it says use place value patterns and mental math to find the missing numbers. We're starting at 884. I know that 884 plus 1 is 885. My hundreds and my tens didn't change. Plus 1 more would be 886. Plus 1 more would be 887, which is good. That means my pattern is correct. Plus 1 more would be 888. Plus 1 more would be 889. Easy peasy. Now, I can't do this. Be very careful with this, ladies and gents. I can't be at 889 and say, oh, 1 more is 890, so this must be 890. You have to be careful with these charts, ladies and gents, because they're not a full string of numbers. It doesn't go from 880 to 889 and start over at the same number. It is starting halfway through our number line here at 884. So be careful. Don't continue from row to row. You need to make sure you're going up and down the columns correctly. Don't wrap around to the next one like we might do on a hundredths chart, okay? So instead, what I could do is I could look at 895 and say, oh, I need to find the number to the left, which would be 1 less, which would be 894. Or I can use my columns and do it by tens. 884, my 8 in the tens place would go up by 1, which makes it a 9. So my number would be 894. Okay. Same thing over here. 886 would become 896. Now it gets a little bit tricky when you go down to the next row and you're in the 90 part, okay? So be careful with this, watch this. My 9 in the tens place now becomes a 10. So in the tens place, I need to put a 0, and then I need to increase my hundreds by 1 because 10 tens makes 100. So instead of having 8 hundreds, I now have 9 hundreds, but I still have the same number of ones. 887 plus 1 more 10 makes that 8 become a 9 in the tens place. My hundreds are still the same, and my 7 is still the same in the ones place. Last one's over here. 889 becomes 899. And then I could add 10, or I could come down here and do 908 plus 1 is 909. So there's lots of different tricks, just be very careful. Go ahead and do number 4 all by yourself. Come back to me when you think you've got all of your numbers figured out and we'll double check. Okay, so we don't have a number in the beginning here, so we have to find that one. I'm going to go to 146 and take away 1 to go backwards. So that means my number over here would be 145. 146, 147, 148. Feel free to give yourself a little star on each number that you got correct if you want to keep track. Plus 1 more would be 149. And then 150. So my pattern is correct so far. 145 plus 10 equals 155. Plus 10 would be 165. 146 plus 10 would be 156. Plus 10 would be 166. 147 plus 10 would be 157. Plus 10 would be 167. 148 plus 10 is 158. Plus 10 would be 168, going up by tens. Last one, 150 plus 10 is 160. My tens just increased by 1. Let's do number 5. This is a little bit different. It's not in a table anymore. Instead, it's almost like a list where we are just filling in the numbers in a row in a string of numbers. So we have 456, 457, 458. What do you think comes next? 459. What's after that? Looks like we're counting by ones, right? So 459 plus 1 would be 460. And then next would be 461, 462, 463, 464, 465. So 465. So the pattern in this one is counting by ones. We're only increasing by 1. So 456, 457, 458, 459, 460, 461, 462, 463, 464, 465. Let's take a peek at number 6. The pattern is a little bit different on this one. You're not increasing by ones. Take a peek, see if you can figure out how much you're increasing each time and see if you can figure out what numbers are missing. Come back to me when you have it all figured out. Okay, 620 to 630 is not increasing by 1. Instead, my tens place is going up by 1, which means each time I am adding a 10. So 620, 630, 640, 650, 660, 670, 680, 690. What comes after that? What's 10 more than 690? 700, 710, 720. Good job, ladies and gents. Let's go down to the bottom of the page. Let's do number 9. Let's do number 9 together. It says, describe each number pattern. So we need to look at the pattern and tell them what is changing in these numbers. 130, 230, 330, 430, 530. Which place value is changing in these numbers? Is it the ones, the tens, or the hundreds? Which one is changing? The ones are all 0. The tens are all 3s. The hundreds is what's changing. So if I go from 130 to 230, how much am I adding? 100. So we can say that the numbers are increasing by 100. That's what the pattern is. The numbers are increasing by 100. Increasing means that it's being added on. The number is getting bigger by that much. I want you to try and figure out the pattern in number 10. Write it out down here and come back to me when you think you found it. Okay, let's look at the numbers. 320, 330, 340, 350, 360. So my ones place are all 0, so the ones are not changing. My tens go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My tens are increasing. Are my hundreds increasing? 3, 3, 3. Nope. We're all the same hundreds. So my tens are the only ones increasing, which means my numbers are increasing, they're getting bigger by 10. That's the pattern in that set. We're going to do one last problem on the next page. So let's go ahead and turn that page. We're going to solve number 11 together. It says, Sally sees a pattern in these numbers. Describe the pattern. Let's look at the numbers. 500, 501, 502, 503, 504, 505. We need to describe the pattern that Sally is seeing. What part of our numbers are changing? What place values? The hundreds are all fives. The tens all have a 0 in it. So it's not the hundreds, it's not the tens. So that means it has to be the ones because they are going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means our pattern is that the numbers are increasing by 1. We can say the ones digit is increasing by 1. Another way to say that would be it is counting by ones. Kind of like when we count normally, we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are increasing by 1. If we said 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, we are counting by tens. Our numbers are increasing by 10. Okay, great job, you guys. I hope you have fun with today's math. I love seeing patterns in numbers. Let's look at your homework for today. Okay, you're going to go back into your workbook to page 543, and you're going to do these 4 problems. Number 7, number 8, number 12, and number 14 in your workbook. You were doing those for extra practice, ladies and gents. Then you're going to go do your quick check, and after that, you're going to go spend some time on Math Facts Pro. I will see you guys again back here tomorrow. Bye, friends.